Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a video covering my thoughts, my impressions for specifically gaming on three different QD OLED panels at 32 inches, 4K 240. I've got the Gigabyte FO32U2P, I've got the Asus PG32UCDM, and the Samsung G80SD. I went into this video thinking I was absolutely going to despise playing at 32 inches, regardless of 4K 240. And I have to say, I'm now walking away maining two of these three monitors, both as my primary and my secondary monitors. I just have been blown away by the 4K 240 experience. It feels great. And I just want to go over the differences of the three panels and talk about which ones I ended up keeping and why. The Gigabyte panel looks essentially identical to the Asus panel. So in terms of like font on icons and things like that, everything looks pretty much identical. The only thing I would say is the Gigabyte panel does look a little bit warmer in certain areas of Windows. So for instance, the bottom little icon taskbar here comes off a little bit warmer. And then anything in terms of like backgrounds on certain websites will look quite a bit more yellow or more warm. And I think that's just because the Asus out of the box is better tuned. But it will just take a little bit of tinkering to make it look as good as the Asus. In terms of its overall clarity, though, I mean, it's just a beautiful monitor that just looks and works astonishing for 4K content. It's a very good QD OLED panel. Now, the thing that I'm sure everyone's kind of dying to know is how capable this is for competitive shooter purposes. I personally think this monitor at 32 4K 240 is amazing for competitive purposes as long as your computer can hit it. I've got a 4090, I've got a 7950 X3D, so my system's pretty powerful. But in terms of overall visible clarity, the visible clarity on this monitor is immaculate, just like the Asus as well as the Samsung 4K 240. Now, one of the things you'll notice in game is, for some reason, every time I open an application, and this will be one of the downsides of the Gigabyte monitor right now, is I do have to go to the contrast and go one up or one down. Every time I close out of an application and go back into an application, my color presets change. And you can see I like it a little bit brighter, and the brightness on this monitor is really, really nice for a QD OLED. Now, the only thing you'll notice that is different than the Asus monitor, the OSD is obviously Gigabyte's own, but the black equalizer actually goes a little bit higher, and it does work better on this panel than the Asus. The Asus, I think, only goes up to 3 different levels, and it doesn't get quite as high as the Gigabyte just out of even just noticing it off the bat. The Gigabyte has super resolution. I've turned super resolution all the way up. You guys might like super resolution. I don't. It makes everything in the background or different textures of things look a little bit grainy. So when we go over here, you'll notice just all the extra detail in the grain of that rock. And I just don't think it does anything for me competitively speaking. And it begins to make my eyes feel a little bit weird just because different things in game have different levels of sharpness, and it just throws me off a little bit. So I do keep that off in the gaming settings. And I will note as well, super resolution on desktop does make things sometimes look a little bit off in terms of font as well. To get into the display mode settings, I will say I think this monitor does go to the different aspects, the different scaling modes faster than the Asus. So I can go down to 24 inches at 16:9 aspect ratio. And you can see another difference is it does not go to the center of the screen like the Asus. It goes into a little square here starting at the bottom center of the panel. Now, the great thing about this is if you ever wanted 4K resolution 240 in a 24-inch package, this right now is the only way that I know of how to get that, and it looks phenomenal. You can see it doesn't make things look extra small. Everything looks very crisp and in 4K resolution. And you can see here, it does pair at that 4K resolution perfectly. The Asus monitor actually does go back down to, I think, around like 2900 something resolution when you go down to the smaller aspect ratio, at least in Apex. Now, you will notice again, though, that because the screen shifted, my color settings also went back to a different preset. I don't know why it does that, but it does. And this is my current preset. I like it a little bit brighter and a little bit cooler and less warm. But that aspect ratio control does work beautifully. You got the 24 inches, and then you also can go to 27 inches. And again, it just changes so quickly and looks actually very good. It's just fully functional and is nice. So it's almost like you get 3 monitors in one, all at 4K resolution. So you don't always have to play at 32 inches 4K resolution. I think that's honestly a game changer, in my opinion, for anybody who's always wanted that 24-inch 4K experience. The monitor does have FreeSync Premium Pro, but that has to be disabled to get to the aspect display changes. And then when you get over here, the only thing that is different are the color vibrance features. The color vibrance does have a larger scale than the Asus, but I think ultimately when you get each maxed out, it equals about the same in terms of color vibrance. And then you've got just the different gamma features. And of course, you can go to the different color settings as well. Going to, I just stay on native. And then I think that's about it. The monitor does have KVM, daisy chain, and picture-in-picture. But otherwise, it is literally the same thing, essentially, as the Asus panel, and just extremely good for gaming purposes. Whether you're at 32 inches 4K 240, or you drop down to that 24-inch mode, I just think the monitor performs so well at 4K 240 because of that extra clarity, that extra visibility. It feels phenomenal. And you guys can see I do have the Gigabyte on its stand right now. I think the legs just extend too far forward, so if you're on even a large desk, it might kind of get into your playing space. But the monitor does have a great amount of, let me pull it forward here, but it has a great amount of swivel on the stand itself. And in terms of the verticality of the stand, it just has quite a bit of range, a lot of flex, both forward and backwards. And the nice thing about this stand as well is you can get this thing in 4K 240 in portrait mode. In terms of the Asus panel, just out of the box, I think it is the perfect QD OLED in terms of color calibration. I'm on the FPS preset in terms of the color, and for me, it's just perfect. Whites look white. They don't look too warm. They really did a nice job with the color calibration out of the box. And the whites, again, they just pop more on this monitor than the Gigabyte. You have to tinker with the Gigabyte quite a bit more. When you see the differences, I think the stand has the same functionality. The legs don't extend forward quite as much as the Gigabyte, but the stand can't go as far back as the Gigabyte because of a little thing I'll show you later. You do have the Asus embroidery here at the front of the panel, and the bezel doesn't seem to get as low as the Gigabyte. I kind of like that on the Gigabyte because it hides the bottom connections, the cables, a little bit more, in my opinion. When we get to other features in Windows, again, I'll just show you guys the web browser. I've got the color vibrance up a little bit, but the whites just look a lot more white out of the box. When we get into Apex, I will swap it to full screen mode. You'll see the game looks literally just as good as the Gigabyte. It's the same panel. It performs just as good. Again, I think it just has perfect calibration out of the box. If you don't want to mess with it, this is a great monitor. In terms of the gaming features, you've got your FPS counters, you've got your crosshairs, you've got the sniper mode, which puts a little box in the middle that will magnify things, which I just don't like the feature, but maybe somebody will get a use case scenario out of that. I just don't think that, for me, it is anything that I would personally ever use. You've got Sniper Night Vision that does the same thing. It's just the box is green, which I just don't know who would need that. And then Shadow Boost, you've got the 3 different levels, but then you also have Dynamic Shadow Boost, which I think is actually a really nice feature. I think it's kind of like that AI thing that we saw on the MSI. I could be wrong about that, but it does seem like a very nice feature, and I've been preferring that on Dynamic. On Image, You've got Vivid Pixel, which is basically just sharpness from the Gigabyte. I think it's just as sharp with Vivid Pixel at 100 or the Gigabyte sharpness at 10. HDR mode on both monitors is kind of underwhelming, so I'll just skip past that. I'm sure you guys can see some HDR things in other videos. And then you do have just a few other things like saturation, picture-in-picture, where you can kind of control your color vibrance with saturation. Other than that, again, the monitor does have the aspect control at 24 inches. The max resolution is 2992 by 1684. I think it looks exceptional at that resolution. You'll save a little bit of FPS, but I just think the aspect control feature here is just solid. I mean, everything looks so good in terms of the visibility at that high resolution in 24.5. 240 hertz is super, super clean. And I mean, really just the extra visibility you're getting at 24.5 compared to 1080 is pretty damn monumental. And I do think that it provides a competitive edge compared to a 1080p. You're getting that visibility, but you're still getting everything in your face and not too big at 32. Again, though, I do think that at 32 4K 240, the performance is just really nice across the board for single-player games and competitive games because of that increased visibility. I thought it was going to be too much in my face. It's really not. I think at 32 4K 240, both of these monitors are awesome for competitive play. Now, one of my favorite panels is the Samsung G80SD, and you guys see I have this in my top spot on my wall mount because this is going to be my main secondary monitor, and I'll explain why. This is the only monitor that comes with a controller, and the controller is because it also has a smart TV feature, which I'll show you guys soon. But I still have the Asus here. You can see the main difference, and they're both using, I think, the Samsung 3rd Gen panel. But you can see you've got matte versus glossy. The Asus has a heatsink along with the Gigabyte has a heatsink, allowing it to kind of have that greater peak brightness. And you can really see the difference in the brightness throughout different scenes on this background right here. The glossy panel, in my opinion, definitely is better than the matte in terms of overall picture clarity. It's just like things pop more, colors look nicer. It's really something that just feels more fluid and vivid compared to the matte coating, even though the matte coating is so damn good on the Samsung G80SD. The picture clarity, again, is pretty on point. It's just really the brightness, the difference in the coating, and the difference in the level of vibrance with the Asus and Gigabyte panels compared to the Samsung panel. Again, if you don't really care about that brightness differential and you don't care about glossy, you can definitely save money and get the G80SD. But what I love about the G80SD is the fact that it also operates with this remote as a smart TV. So, I mean, this is one of the coolest things that I've seen, but I mean, you can get access to Netflix, Prime Video, Disney, Hulu. It's got all those built-in TV apps for anything you want to watch. The quality in TV mode, I don't think is that fantastic, but it's very functional. Now, getting back to your PC is very fast and very easy. And one of the things I really love about the monitor, of course, it has built-in Wi-Fi, so you can update it all directly through the monitor itself. But it has this multi-view feature, so I can pay attention to my stream here on the top left, and then I can have one of the TV apps open on the right here. I've got YouTube open on the right. So it's pretty cool that I can turn this into two different screens. The TV also has, or the monitor also has, built-in speakers. The built-in speakers actually sound pretty good. So overall, the monitor does have some great functionality, and I think is something that if you're looking for a do-it-all, you want those TV apps, you want a monitor that has that different functionality, and you also want something that works really nice in games, it is a very nice 4K 240 monitor. The main takeaway that I want you guys to walk away from this video with is 4K 240 looks absolutely beautiful, even at 32 inches. I thought 32 inches was going to be too big for competitive purposes. I'm playing like an animal at 32 inches 4K 240 because the extra clarity, the extra visibility really is just beautiful. I don't find myself missing things in game that I otherwise would be picking up because of the peripheral vision with 32 inches. And I can always scale it down to 24 and play at 4K as opposed to 1080p. So the extra visibility is immense, in my opinion. Now, the reason I am going to stick with the Gigabyte monitor instead of Asus really boiled down to a few things. One, the way the monitor is set up, I have a divot in my desk where all my cables go on the left side, and that's where the big power cable goes on the Gigabyte. The panel also hides the cables a little bit better on the underside of the monitor, which is where the ports are compared to the Asus. The Gigabyte monitor also has DisplayPort 2.1, so I'm future-proofing myself when the new version of the video cards come out. If I am to get one, I will be able to use that hopefully with DisplayPort 2.1. And Dolby Vision, that's just not something I'm interested in, because if I am going to watch a movie, I'm going to watch it on my big screen OLED TV in the family room. Between this monitor and the Asus monitor, though, they are so close. They're all third-gen Samsung panels. They're all beautiful. And again, if you want that matte coating instead with a little bit less brightness, but that TV functionality, the Samsung G80SD is absolutely phenomenal. I thought it was going to be my endgame monitor, but because of the price, I really wanted to see what glossy was like, and I'm definitely preferring glossy, and I like the additional brightness I'm getting on the Gigabyte. Another main thing that I do want to tell you guys on the Asus monitor, if you want to hook it up to a wall mount like my monitors are on, you actually have to use this bracket that comes with it. And you guys can see the extra width that like this thing just extends from the wall mount. And it forces the 32-inch monitor that much closer to my face. And it takes up, I lose too much depth of where I want that 32-inch monitor to be. It just looks better closer to the wall. And really the aesthetics of that and the functionality of that was one of the main sticking points of why I went with the Gigabyte. And I'm just crossing my fingers that there's a firmware update that fixes that color setting shift when you enter a program. Remember how I had to go up on contrast 1 or down 1 to get my color profile back to where it was. They say there's a firmware update coming, but it hasn't been updated since May. So hopefully we see faster firmware updates from Gigabyte and really good support from Gigabyte, because the monitor is expensive and it's beautiful. I love it. And I really do think 4K 240 or hopefully 4K 360 down the road with that aspect control functionality where you can shrink it down and basically have like 3 monitors in one. I just think that is a beautiful thing, and I can't recommend all 3 of the monitors in this video enough. It really just depends what you're looking for. That's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope it helped. If it did, please leave a sub to the channel. See you guys in the next review. Peace.